Yep, happy? All right. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education to order. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, as well as our acknowledgement of tribal land. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. We acknowledge that our Board of Education meeting is taking place on occupied indigenous land. We acknowledge the Tesuque Pueblo lands and other tribal lands on which we stand. We honor these people, past, present, and future. We acknowledge the history and ongoing colonization of where we are sitting right now in New Mexico and in our country. We acknowledge our own place in the story of colonization. Thank you very much. Now we will go ahead with approval of the agenda. Superintendent, do we need any changes?
There are no changes. Thank you, President.
Thank you.
President Noble, I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, and just to note, we do now have a full board as Board Member Abeta has arrived. We will move on to Roman numeral 2 on our executive session. Dr. Gonzalez.
I'd like to move us into executive session where we're going to discuss limited personnel matters. NMSA 1978 10-15-1 H2 Superintendent's Contract.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we will be in executive session until further notice.
Okay, we will now come back from executive session. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, I'd like to move us out of executive session where we discuss limited personnel matters, NMSA 1978 10-15-1H2 Superintendent's Contract.
No action was taken.
And no action was taken.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? We are out of executive session. Roman numeral 3, introduction of interpreter.
This time we will not need an interpreter.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Roman numeral 4, presentations. We're starting with A finance plan for general obligation bond and education technology notes. We welcome Mr. Harrigan to the table.
Great, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Madam President, members of the board, superintendent, Eric Harrigan, and then my colleague Carissa Stone is here with me. She's the brains behind the operation. So, but we're here as we typically do during this time. The district will start selling its first tranche of bonds that were authorized by voters this past November. There's a lot of information in here. I'm going to cover it at a very high level, especially the market. But if there's anything that you want to kind of delve into deeper and talk about in more depth, we certainly can. So on the next page, we have your history of assessed valuation. The district's tax base continues to grow very well. This current year, we saw about 6% growth in your tax base. Your tax base did eclipse $10 billion. The amount of legal capacity that you can issue or have outstanding is capped at 6% of your tax base, which is about a little over $600 million. You currently have 147 outstanding, which puts you at about 25% bonding capacity. That's your legal, that's your legal capacity. Obviously, if you went up to that amount, you would face a tax increase, and that's not what we're looking at. We're looking just to continue to maintain the district's tax rate. So on page 2 of the presentation, we do have a history of your tax rates. You've got your operational mill levy, your 2 mill, your HB 33, and then we've got your GEO bonds and your education technology notes. As we talk about both of those issuances tonight, these will just continue to maintain those historical tax rates that you have had in place. On page 3, you pay your debt off very quickly. This is what allows us to layer in these borrowings and continue to maintain that tax rate. Depending upon how quickly your tax base grows, we can retire that debt quicker, and then that just leads to future capacity down the road. And then we also have shown your ETN. So you have 124 million of general obligation bonds and around 24 million of education technology notes. So, prior to November of 25, voters 4 years ago approved, 5 years ago approved 100 million. Because your tax base grew, that capacity went up to 150 million. And so this is the first issuance of those bonds in the amount of 40 million. And then the district will sell roughly 30 million every single year, depending upon the needs of the district thereafter. And then we would be going back to voters in November of 2029 for additional authorization. In 2023, voters also approved $55 million in education technology notes. This will be the third issuance of that. After these bonds are sold, there will be 22 million left outstanding or left to issue. On page 5, we just like this for planning purposes. The district luckily doesn't have any bond or mill levy questions that will go to voters next November in 2027. But you will have a bond and a 2 mill levy question for renewal in November of 2029. So from a timing perspective, subject to your approval on the 2 action items that are up later this evening, we will move forward with the issuance of these bonds. The education technology note statute is very precise in when you have to price these bonds. You can't price them earlier than 3 weeks after the approval of the notice of the necessity resolution, and no later than 4 weeks. So we have this very short window, and the reason that we have a special meeting scheduled on May 14th to approve the sale of the education technology notes. And that is for the general obligation bonds, you're delegating to staff and superintendent to award the sale. But with the education technology notes, that actually comes back for a formal approval of the board on May 14th. And then after that, we would then look towards closing, which funds would be available in the mid-June timeframe, which you can expend, you can start expending on the projects. So as I mentioned, if go to slide 8. So one thing that we have talked about in the past, it's now coming a reality this upcoming tax year, is there are 2 constitutional amendments that were approved by voters in November of 2024, which basically expanded the exemption that veterans receive. It expanded the standard exemption that all veterans are eligible for that own property from 4,000 to 10,000. It also expanded, if you will, the definition of a disabled veteran from 100% disabled to any percent disabled, and ties their property tax exemption to that percent disability. So just to kind of give you an idea of like what that would mean, if you have a 50% disabled veteran, say they own a $600,000 home here in Santa Fe, then that would the assessor's value, it's a third of that, so it would be $200,000. They would, prior to this amendment coming into play, they would have paid property taxes on effectively $196,000 because the standard exemption went from 4 to 10, and then you have the percent. They're now paying property taxes basically on about 90,000 instead of 194,000. So it could have a potentially large impact. And what we have done is we have estimated what that potential impact is. We have very limited data, but we should be getting more information on it in the next month or so. But we estimate that the impact to the district is about $182 million in net taxable value. It's about 1.8% of your tax base. I will know that when we've looked at all the various school districts around the state, you're really on the low side. We've seen school districts as high as 12%, could see upwards of a 12% impact to their tax base. And I would say on average, most school districts are around 3 to 4%. So it does have the ability to impact your tax base. It's not going to impact your ability to sell these bonds or your education technology notes, and it's not going to impact the tax rates that you have in place to pay the debt service on those bonds. So we have a bunch of slides on the market, which I won't bore you to tears with, and I'll just kind of cover at a high level. Obviously, there's a lot of geopolitical events that are happening in the world that have impacted all kinds of markets. What we have seen, though, is that we have seen that the municipal market, the tax-exempt municipal market, has been fairly resilient. Money continues to flow into those markets. It's kind of considered a safe haven asset, as you will. as people are worried about the economy or worried about the stock market, they will often go into municipal bonds or U.S. Treasuries. And we've continued to see that. We have seen an increase in interest rates just due to the impact that we've seen in the increase in oil. Ultimately, investors believe that's going to increase in basically just generally increase prices in general and inflation, and we did see that in the last CPI report that we got, is that the increase in oil has impacted that. So while we have seen, about a 20 to 30 basis point increase in interest rates over the last month or so, there's still a lot of demand for municipal bonds. We don't anticipate there being any issue with the district being able to sell its bonds and garnering strong interest from investors. With that, I will be happy to answer any questions either about the market or about the proposed bond issues that you'll be hearing later this evening.
Any questions from the board? Yeah, Vice President Jose.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. By the way, I love your presentation.
Yes.
I'm thrilled every time. It's like marketplace in real worlds. So I really appreciate that. On page 6 with our timeline, we're doing both GO bond and ETN tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's two resolutions. One authorizes the general obligation bonds, and then the other is called a necessity resolution, which is sort of kicks off the ETN schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that different then? Because I see that the 30-day limitation isn't until June.
So there's two components, and if I start skiing outside of the lines, I'm going to have Art Melenders come and rescue me. So that the 30-day statute of limitations, what that is, that runs from the date that the board approves the education technology notes, and for the general obligation bonds runs effectively from tonight. And basically what that 30-day statute of limitations does is that once you pass those 30 days, you really can't call into question the validity or the issuance of those bonds. The necessity resolution just kicks off from the education technology notes, kind of kicks off the requirement state statute that requires there's 2 notifications to happen, and then the pricing has to occur within sort of this 1-week window, if you will. And that's what the necessity resolution, but the statute of limitations is more of a call into the legal, question the legal ability. Once that runs, you really can't question.
So even though we're taking action on both of those tonight, the timeline is different.
Yeah, it's slightly different for
Okay.
both the GEOs and the ETNs,
Okay.
just because of the way state statute requires the education technology notes.
Cool.
Good question.
Other questions? I appreciate the presentation a great deal, and as Sarah says, it's like marketplace but grounded. Can you characterize what the markets in municipal bonds have been feeling like? Has it been as uncertain as everything else, or what?
Yeah, really good question. I mean, the tone of the market for municipal bonds has been pretty good, actually. So two weeks ago, Tucson Unified, they sold $135 million in general obligation bonds. They got $900 million in orders. But I can tell you that the tone of the market, it changes on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of it is really headline news, not necessarily technicals. So it appears that Israel and Lebanon have reached a 10-day ceasefire, and that, kind of what's happening between, the U.S. and Iran is not quite, we're not quite sure what's going on there. So I think that, the markets are kind of holding on, you know, if we were to see ceasefire, if we were to see actual, you know, free-flowing traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, you would probably see oil drop pretty significantly, and then you would also probably see rates follow. But everything that I've heard, that doesn't just happen overnight. And so, like I said, money is continuing to flow into the municipal bond. There appears to be, you know, decent tone in the municipal market. But as we have seen through not only the pandemic, but in many other instances, if there is a shock to the system, that can reverse course very, very quickly. One of the benefits and one of the reasons that we were recommending that the district do a negotiated sale is that it gives the district a lot of flexibility to enter the market for the general obligation bonds. If we were faced a situation where there was either a shutdown in the municipal market or we just didn't like what we were seeing, we could price the general obligation bonds, but we would have to unfortunately start the ETN process over again, which we think, you know, with the general obligation bonds, it's longer debt, it's 40 million, it has a higher, you know, you're going to pay more interest over the life of that. You're going to want to be more nimble with the general obligation bonds than you are the ETNs. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just found page 21 too, with all the municipal bond
Yeah,
flows.
we love our charts.
It's a good one. I really like that.
I also love your charts.
Okay, any other questions? Are you all waiting for us to approve the resolutions? You're hanging out?
Yes, we're going to be here, and we'll, that's, I think, action under 5, it's action item A and B, and we'll be here and be available for questions, and Art Melendres will go over those resolutions with you.
Okay. And what I was going to suggest, if it's all right with the board and the team, is that we just go ahead and do that, given that our brains are on that, and, okay. In that case, I will go ahead and call us to action item A, Resolution 2025-2026-16, consideration for approval of the notice of sale of the series of 2026 general obligation bonds. Welcome, Art.
Good evening. Madam President, members of the board, superintendent, good to be here. Eric did not go out his lane. He probably saved me. Before we get into the actual resolution, I just want to make one comment about the ETNs. So Santa Fe Schools is a little bit unique in that the city, shall we, we'll call it the city different. But when the legislature authorized going out for education technology notes, what the legislature said is we are giving school districts the authority to do this without voter approval. You don't have to go to the voters and ask them to vote to issue. All right. Santa Fe Schools was a bit reticent about just doing that, and they have gone to the voters who have always approved the education technology notes. But the reason that the statute has this tight window and 2 meetings of the board and don't allow you to delegate to the superintendent is because a lot of school districts don't have voter approval. So on their own, they come to the meeting, they say we're going to issue ed tech notes, and we set up another meeting and advertise it so the public, the citizens can come, and if they have questions, ask them or object or support. So it's a little bit odd in the sense that the statute still has the 2 meetings. That's where we are. All right, let me get to business instead of talking. So what you have before you is a notice of sale of general obligation bonds for $40 million. And As Eric already explained, this will be on May 14th is when the pricing or sale of the bonds will occur. And what Eric and RBC have recommended is that you select an underwriter who will go to market and determine all of the offers from various investors, bring back the best interest rate, and then the superintendent will be asked to sign a bond purchase agreement allowing the sale of the bonds. And so this document, although it's multiple pages, has just a couple of component parts. It tells us what the purpose of the bonds is. It tells us to publish notice to the world, the investors. It tells us that over a 12-year period, you will pay back the bonds. And there is on page 5 what we call a parameters resolution. And the statute, when it authorizes the superintendent as your delegatee to sign, has to make sure that the underwriters have stayed within all the parameters, which is a proper interest rate, proper timing, and proper use of the bonds. And so that is all in accordance with state law. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the notice of sale itself.
Thank you, Mr. Melendez. Any questions from the board? Or superintendent, or finance, or anybody? Okay.
President Noble.
Yep, go ahead.
It's not so much a question, and I don't know if it's relevant, but because these are cover sheets on our packets, there are some incorrect papers. Like there's ETN stuff in the Go Bonds packet.
Uh-oh.
See what's online and what's posted. It could have just been stapling and sent to email.
Yeah, I think it very well might have just been stapling because it's a lot of exhibits and addendums and whatnot, but I just want
No,
to,
that's not what's online.
okay.
I've written some notes on mine so I can speak to you, but I can give you, this is the GO bond.
Yeah.
This is the first one we're looking at. Right here?
Exhibit, the exhibits here.
And it's
are in-
correct in the signature file.
Okay.
It looks like
As long as
it is
that's-
just the.
An extra
No,
packet, yeah.
you didn't staple them.
No, I don't want to get too close.
Oh, no,
Leaning over your shoulder and about to smother you here.
no, I think, I just want to make sure that what's signed and what's
Yeah,
posted or,
well, and that is a question. We send you away, everybody signs this sheet, assuming we pass this. Is that correct?
So actually, what I will do, I've talked to Alma, we will type in, the reason that page is blank is because I wasn't sure who would be here,
Yep.
if there was someone who was absent, but we will type in between Alma and I on page 1, all of your names in the appropriate place, and we will note who moves the resolution.
Okay, and then it just looks like all the signing is president and secretary.
Correct.
Okay.
And Alma has, I think she gave you one with a sign here.
Yeah,
I think it really might just be the cover sheets that are mixed
that are
up.
reversed,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
Looking
that's right.
through.
Thanks, Eric. Oh.
Okay, any other questions from the board? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
And we're talking about the GO bonds now?
Yes.
Just to say the action
The
item that we're
resolution
on.
2025-2026-16, consider for approval the notice of sale of the series of 2026 general obligation bonds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Thank you very much. Okay, our next item that we will go ahead and move on to action item B, Resolution 2025-2026-17. Consider for approval the necessity resolution for the acquisition of technology equipment. Art, anything else to say here? Any
No.
other questions from the board?
Nothing else to say.
I appreciate the history, because this was something that the Santa Fe Public Schools kind of pioneered
That is-
with the ETNs, and it was 4 superintendents ago, right? Richard was here then. All right, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve Resolution 2025-2617.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed or otherwise? Motion carries. And final question, do you want Carmen and I to sign this and send you away with stuff now? Or does it matter?
You can do that if you want, or you can sign it at your convenience, preferably before the evening ends, and Alma and I will coordinate. So I don't want to interrupt you any more than I already have. Are you-
Okay, I think we're fine.
Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you for coming, to both of you, appreciate you.
Absolutely.
All right, and we will sign things before the evening ends.
Okay, thank you. So I am gonna jump in the car and drive back to Outer. So have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on back to Roman numeral 4, Presentation B, Update on FY26 and FY27 budgets. Superintendent. Oh, okay. We can share one.
Chief Financial Officer?
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for that. I think what I'm presenting now today is an update on both this year to finish off the year, and then how it sets up for the FY27 budget, and some updates that we have received. Wish there were more to update, but we do have enough to let you know what we've seen so far. Okay. And go ahead to the next one. Yeah, okay. So the biggest update we have so far, at least, is that we did get our final unit value. That's done at least twice a year, and we did receive it. Seemed a little late this year, but it did bump the unit value up 1.1%, which doesn't sound like much, but when you consider that SCG is 150 million, 1% is at 1.5 million, and so the amount of this increase would be about 1.7 million. We are required to notify NEA of this increase, and we did. We let them know what we're using that for, and the 4 biggest ticket items that we needed to shore up was the audit cash. When the audit is finally completed, the PD will require us to enter into their OBMS system, the operating budget management system, all the cash balances, and then if it's different than what we budgeted, they will either increase or decrease our budget accordingly. With the operating budget, it's going to be a decrease of 523,000, so a little over $500,000. We also identified a few other areas that needed shoring up. The substitute contract is increasing. We were given notice that they need about another 500,000 to finish the year off. We had quite a few lawsuits and settlements that were above and beyond what we were anticipating, and those I think are required to get paid from operational. You can't use the IDB funds for those, so operational bears the brunt of those. And we had some IRS penalties and interest, some intercepted payments that kind of forced our hand on those. So in total, those items added up to above what we were, about 1.8 million, so they eclipsed the amount of our increase. So it pretty much used that up. There's quite a few end-of-year activities that happen. This is probably the busiest quarter there is. It's kind of like the mad sprint to the end of the year, and a lot has to happen to get ourselves in a good position, not only to estimate our cash balance that we'll be using for next year, and then also it's just to make sure that we avoid any audit findings and get our budgets aligned and ready for that end of the year reporting. Our spending deadline passed, it was on Friday. That's what we give the schools to get all their spending in. And then we'll go through and kind of clean up all the purchase orders and close those out. And what it really does is it kind of helps us in formulating what our cash balance will be. If we have schools are a big source of spending, so knowing that those numbers are settled and aren't going to increase, we could kind of start working on getting our cash balance forecasted. We also review, I think a lot of people see the operational budget and think SEG, and that's for the most part true. It is the largest revenue source by far. 167 million is our overall budget. 147 of that is SEG. And so we start looking at some of those other revenue sources and see if they materialized as they were budgeted. Unlike the SEG is pretty much guaranteed to hit. We get those in 1/12 increments from the state. Some of the other revenue sources are more of an estimate, and so we take a look now and see how accurate they were. We try to get the overall budget to basically equal what we anticipate receiving as far as revenue and our cash. And once you do that, then the budget balance becomes basically what you expect the ending cash balance to do. So you kind of take care of that side of it, and it makes it easier for the forecasting. There's some other end-of-the-year activities. We did, as you know, have an audit finding for having a couple functions within funds over budget. That's the requirement that PED has, with single object codes within the budget can be over, but they look at it at a function level. So what we've been doing, we started this before the submission of the third quarter, but it really becomes more frequent as the year, as we hit this fourth quarter, is just to make sure that none of the fund functions are over, and there's ways to fix it. Encumbrances, if it's over because of encumbrances, or if there's expenses that need to be moved out, or if there's even those transfers within the fund that from one function to another. That was that additional approval you gave us, or that we have, and so that makes it much easier, because otherwise we really had to make sure that everything was ready for that final board meeting of the year, so that we end the year in the positive. So that's definitely some flexibility that's going to help us avoid an audit finding, and I don't anticipate having that finding again next year. We also start to roll over our 1 year to the next. We don't recreate everything in the new fiscal year. That would, with as many employees as we have, you could imagine what a task that would be. So we pretty much do all the cleanup now. If there's any chart account combinations that aren't allowed, we inactivate it so they don't roll into the next fiscal year. Kind of clean up as much as we can so that we start the year with as clean of data and ready to go on July 1st. I put here fixing the cash balances. We had another audit finding for activity funds. And so now that once the school year ends, we start really looking at those and working with schools to try to move money from the general activity fund into some of those activity funds that were in the negative. and get those as cleaned up as much as possible. I think that finding is going to be a little harder to remove because there was just so many of them, and I think we've mentioned in the past that it's hard to fix activity funds because they have to be self-generating, and you can't rely from operational funds to help that. So, and then I also added, because it doesn't happen very often, but it did last year, there's a statute that states that if you have a fund balance in transportation, you have to return half of the money. And so we ended last year with around 171,000, so we're going to be cutting a check back to them. And so we're going to try as much as we can to get it minimized as much as possible, and avoid sending anything back to PD. And the final bullet here is we check all the grants to make sure that they're in line. You know, they're always at the negative just by nature of being a reimbursement fund. But when you consider and add back in what PD is owed, they should hit zero. And if they're above or below that, you have to fix those either by cash transfers or from operational if they're in the negative, or move expenses. And so a lot to review, but it's kind of an exciting time if you like deadlines and stress. This slide was presented at the audit committee, and I thought since we're going to be talking about the final, the FY26 budget, it's a good a snapshot of where we're at now. That 24 million is definitely going to change before the end of the year. The budget amount at the top will change as well. We're going to have the increased VAR that we just mentioned, the decrease for the cash. There's a couple cleanup to get the revenues aligned. There's a couple revenues that didn't materialize that we'll have to, not much, but we'll have to fix those. What I've done is try to see what historically has happened in the last quarter to that budget balance. And what I did was above that, you'll see last year and what the budget balance was at the end of the quarter, and then what we ended the year with. And as you could see, it went down quite a bit. There's a lot of summer work that happens. You know, we shut off the spending on one set of, you know, the schools, but then summer programs, and that's when facilities really ramps up their work. Is of course, with school out, that's when a lot of the projects start and the cleanup. And so if that trend holds true, I expect to end this year with around 20 million of budget balance, which is about 12.5%, or 12, just a little over 12%. So now on to the updates on the upcoming FY27 operating budget. We were hoping to have a final 910B5 funding formula from PD. Unfortunately, we haven't received one yet. They said it's going to be this week, so they have another day to get that to us. But what they were able to do is we sat with them, our deputy CFO sat down with them, and they went through all the numbers and plugged it into the funding formula. And so we have a good idea of what that is. We did meet with each of the schools and the departments. At the time that we last had our finance committee, we didn't start that process yet, but we've met with every school and every department. The participants at that meeting, it's not just business services sitting down there and telling them what they can't spend. We actually have a lot of individuals around the table. We have our deputy and associate superintendents. We have the subject matter specialists from the following departments weighing in on what the needs of the schools are based on their numbers and the needs. There's human resources, exceptional students, student wellness, bilingual, arts and music. And then for the schools, it's usually a principal, assistant principals, and sometimes we'll have another staff member there as well. For departments, usually directors and assistant directors. Another thing we review at these meetings is we actually look at what their current year is, whether the budget that was set up for them was sufficient to meet their needs, and if there were any issues they had or any anything that may help us in setting their next year's budget. We do ask them to kind of give us an idea of what they feel they would need for their schools, and we try to categorize those as best we could as whether, if it's something that is to complete their educational mission, or, you know, just the basic, like a vacancy and all, you know, obviously we're going to give them those, or if it's for compliance issues. All the other requests, what we've done is we ask them to submit justification on how that request will help their students, their school, and the district, and we have those all tallied and ready to go. They're approximately $6 million, and what we'll do is we'll meet as a team and with the associate superintendents and the superintendent, myself, go through those and really just try to rank them and see which ones really are truly needs, and try to give some priority. We also are trying to identify the requests that are non-recurring, because that budget balance I showed you earlier, while nice to have, we don't want to have too much so that PD comes back and claws it. So if it's non-recurring, we may even consider funding that out of this year's, with this year's money. But they definitely would get more consideration, because as you know, when you're talking about cash, you don't want to fund recurring, and you know, it leads to issues down the road. So then I kind of got ahead of myself earlier, but this is some 910B5 data that we have. And these are kind of takeaways from the major components of the unit, the funding formula. Our basic membership went down by 5.16%. That was 528 students. Special ed units actually increased, and as a result, we probably didn't take as big of a hit as we would have. However, it's additional revenue, but it also has additional requirements and needs. It means that there's more of a need in that area. One number that went up a bit was the ancillary FTE. That's like the speech pathologists and diagnosticians and so forth, and those units actually went up by almost 6 units, and each of those are worth 25 units each. So that's 150 or so units just from that one increase. We also had some increase in our gifted numbers. I broke bilingual out into 2 bullets because that one's unique in that it's a factor that is based on student counts like a lot of these others are, but it's also on the type of instructional programs we have. If we have a 3-hour block of instruction, we get paid more, obviously, than a 1 or 2 hour. And so, and later on, you'll see the breakdown of what those programs are. Fine arts decreased 4.41%. At risk, that one is a combination of both our basic units, but it also goes through an at-risk factor. And I guess we could spin this as positive news that our at-risk factor went down slightly, which means that someone thinks our needs or our at-risk needs are less, but it of course means less funding as well. And here's just some comparisons of some of those. The bottom number is actually the amount of funding that we're going to anticipate receiving. If you're wondering why there's 2 FY26 columns, the first one is the initial unit value that we had at the beginning of the year. The second one is the revised one, the one that generated that bar that you'll be seeing next board meeting. The total amounts are almost the same. 149.6 million is what we're going to end this year with in SEG. We're going to get 149.9, so about 350,000 more. It's kind of interesting, the overall amount is going to be roughly the same, but the makeup of that budget with special ed shifts, it's going to be some shifts within the budget that, but overall the amount is relatively the same. All right. And so the upcoming steps, what now that we've met with all the schools and departments, we have an idea of what the staffing is for each of the schools. We're going to consolidate that. We'll get an idea of salaries make up the largest portion of our budget. So we'll tally that, the benefits, working in any of the new premium costs. They went up. The medical went up almost 10%. Dental, I think 4%. We have a new employer match that 80-20 is going to cost us some. The good news on that is if we've already been giving more than what the minimum was, so now we're going to get at least some funding for that. It's not going to only be on our dime. Then we consolidate all the rest, and then if there are any additional board requests or initiatives that might be included, we also work those in. All right. Then just some of the other buckets that the utility costs, risk premium, and other revenue. And then once we've chipped away at that 150 million or so, and we'll know how much we have left, and that's when we could start looking at those wish lists and seeing what how much is left or what we could fund with that. So, and we anticipate that within the next couple weeks. And I think that's it. I've also had on the appendix, there's some more graphs if you want to see some of the those like the A and B units and so forth. There's there as well. Oh, yeah. It got double service. It was an audit committee meeting too, so couldn't help it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Go ahead, Member Blaya.
So on page 5, and forgive me for not knowing this, but what does the transportation fund pay for?
It's strictly for to and from transportation. No activity trips, no field trips, anything like that. It's strictly to get kids to school and back home after. It's a formula that takes into account route miles and ridership.
Does it pay for the buses or for the bus drivers?
They normally what transportation department would do is they have all of our buses on a real tight replacement schedule, and they'll let us know, hey, you're due for 2 more buses. They'll actually fund those fully for us.
Okay.
But does it pay for salaries? Bus driver salaries?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, sorry, I was addressing how it was generated, but yes, it's, the salaries of all the transportation department, bus drivers, aides, and all that, yeah.
And
So
we
the-
have to pay back.
Yeah, we have to pay it back when we have bus driver shortages. That's,
Yeah, that, you're not the first person that brought that up, that is kind of,
no, I'm done.
Go ahead,
yeah.
Dr. Gonzalez.
I just wanted to ask, in the transportation fund, that's just for salaries then? Or,
That's the largest portion of it. I think we also put the insurance costs that are related to the buses.
I just wondered about
Yeah.
how electric buses are doing. You have electric buses, and if that's making gas, because you're not buying gas for those, I assume. Is it making what we're spending for gas and everything cheaper?
I think it has definitely helped. You know, I recall years ago when we had some surging gas prices that we got a special appropriation from transportation for that. And I don't know if it's
Gonna
we're
happen
at that
again?
point yet, but if things continue, we might see
Probably
some.
not with this administration.
Yeah.
So on this, because obviously it feels sort of devastating, and we've worked for years to get bus driver salaries up, and I get that it's maybe because of vacancies and other things, but given that we're now writing a check, which comes out of where when we have to pay back $100,000?
It's pretty much from that same fund, that what they'll do is they'll say, okay, you give us half, we'll let you budget in the other half as a budget adjustment increase.
No, okay.
Yeah, what's tricky about that one is if there was some expenses that you could move in, they probably would have already been in that fund. So, you know, trying to find some, so we'll have to figure out some ways to get that spent down.
Yeah, no, and I get it, it's a really unique and narrow use
Yeah,
and
exactly.
generation. This is, it's some of the magic, at least as I recall, of what happened with what we did during Superintendent Chavez's time and Robert Martinez was, they talked about it as position control. In my recollection, this was what the city often talked about as vacancy savings. And so how we ride the vacancy savings and budget it ideally to get wages up, knowing that there will be still some outages is, I think, a big part of the art of public budgeting. And this seems like it might be a microcosm of that.
Yeah.
Vice President Bozay.
Thank you. While we're on page 5, I jotted similar notes of like,
Yeah.
let's not leave money on the table when we have driver shortages, and if there can be retention bonuses or we can increase wages for next year, those folks are so valuable, and it just, that's painful.
Yeah, that's a good use for cash, because retention, it's one time and, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Other questions? I guess I actually want to go back to page 3 and understand this a little bit, just in lieu of maybe we'll move on to FY27 stuff. But while we're still getting our heads around the update of FY26. So our audited cash balance was lower than we thought, so we need to fill a hole of $523,000.
It's a good way of putting it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember the institute to the substitute contract or increase, we did that maybe at our last meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not another increase, right?
No.
No,
No,
this is-
it's that one.
we
yeah.
approved that contract, but this is the budget hole that needs to fill. We know, and hopefully we've gotten through our backlog of particularly maybe special ed lawsuit issues, which is that. But we had this once before, this IRS penalties and interest. That's a giant one. Can you say more about that? I mean, this is, and I think we went, Dr. Garcia was like arguing with the IRS
Yeah.
for months, and maybe
Yeah.
even got
I think she got
some of it forgiven.
Yeah, I think there were, there's some rebate and some energy tax credits that we were eligible for through our, from our capital outlay funds, but the IRS doesn't care where the source is. When they know it's coming to taxpayer, that owes them money, they don't send it to you, they just say, we've applied this to your balance. And so what we had to do is then we had to take money from operational and we had to pay it back to I think it was, it was HB or SB, I forgot which, so, because they were really banking on that money, and so and plus these penalties can only get paid from operational, they can't get paid from those others. So it was kind of a, if you will, forced repayment. So it, you know, we still plan on fighting it, and hopefully we get that back, but in the short term, it created this hole that we needed to fix.
Okay. But we do plan to fight it.
Mr. Granata, would you please?
Board president, board members, and so there was an assessment of a penalty that was provided to the district, but it was highly inaccurate, and this occurred like, you know, prior to Superintendent Chavez starting, so back when Superintendent Garcia was here. And so we fought that penalty by basically appealing that amount of the penalty. And so we're stuck in the appeals process right now. And unfortunately, with what's going on with the federal government, there's been, you know, sweeping cuts to the IRS, including like, you know, thousands and thousands of employees. So we're stuck in a situation right now where we're in the appeal process. We can't actually even pay the fine because there isn't a fine that is representative of what we would owe. And so we're stuck in the appeals process, and we can't get in touch with anybody at that office, basically.
Is this the same one then?
Yes.
Ah,
And so meanwhile, every time there is a rebate from the IRS, as Mr. Halford is saying, it automatically goes towards the penalty that we're paying. So we're kind of stuck in a catch-22 situation where we can't pay it, and we can't go forward with the appeal because the government's kind of grinding to a halt. But, I mean, what we can
and
do...
it's accruing interest.
In theory, yes.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, I'm pretty confident that the whole amount of the penalty is, I guess it's hard to predict with this current administration, but I think, you know, it should be absolved. It's just that we're kind of stuck in this weird catch-22 situation. I think, frankly, what I think we need to do is hire a tax attorney who's highly specialized in this area to go forward, because we're just kind of grinding our wheels and getting nowhere.
But we don't see the balance go up with interest, and they keep more and more money? It's sort of
Well,
what
I
I'm
mean,
wondering if that
I think it
interest-
does accrue interest, but I think ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we're gonna come out on top. It's just during this meantime, we're losing, you know, $253,000, which is a significant amount of money.
Yeah, okay. I'm honestly relieved to know it's not a different penalty and interest than the last one we had.
It's a stubborn one.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, other questions? Sounds like we're going to page 10. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Noble. So my questions are sort of similar, both in the bilingual and in the fine arts, but I'll just start with the fine arts. Can you explain to me, because this is going to be a question that we are asked by the community and by staff, like, talk to me about fine arts decreasing by 4.41%.
Yeah. I think that's mostly driven by the basic program units. I think in that case, why it's a different decrease in the 5%, I don't think it is the entire student. I think the top number is, it was an overall decrease of 528. It brought it down to 9,770. I think somehow the fine art number, and I could find out for certain, is a slightly different count than that.
So this is a relative decrease then to our student.
Yeah, it's all, I can tell you for certain, it is student count driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that the same? I mean, it seems like for bilingual, it's partly that and partly different programming, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, I think I think you're correct in that. It's student counts as well as the length of program is. And if I don't know, Joe, if you could flip over to, I think one of the appendixes.
Yeah, I was trying to look through
Vice
those a
President
little bit.
Jose, one of our programs, the Heritage Program at Kearney, is it? We sunsetted that program because we didn't have a teacher for it. So what we see is also a reduction of a program from a school.
Okay.
Yeah.
In addition to the reduction of
Of
overall
students
students.
as well.
Okay. So, thank you. That makes sense. I think my overall question for both of those is just like thinking about what's best for students. And we know that just because we've talked about this example, because there's 3 less kids in the classroom, doesn't mean you don't need a teacher anymore. And so I just think that it's important as we're thinking about scale and decreasing enrollment, and particularly around bilingual education, like, let's keep offering the best programs. Our kids need those. Great if we get reimbursed more money for running bigger and better programs. But let's just make sure that we're not scaling everything down because our numbers are going down, because we still want our kids to get the good programming that they need. And we know that comes from language, it comes from arts, it comes from athletics, it comes from access to all of those cool things that happen. So our budget is our moral document, and it's really important to me that we keep that in mind.
Well, and on this appendix that you took us to, I'd love for you to talk us through a little bit, because I don't understand, I mean, this is all reflection of the 910B5 calculation. So if you could just tell us
Yeah.
what we're looking at here. And
Yeah.
so does that mean our students, maybe because of the reduction of a program, that we're seeing decreased enrollment in fine arts programming, in essence?
Yeah, it's,
Which is less than the overall decrease, so
Yeah,
in theory, that would be a proportional increase.
yeah, on the funding formula itself, they take the total number of student counts and multiply it by a factor, and so that's why these might not be exactly student counts or numbers, but it's what the result of the lower number going through the,
The
for the
unit
most part,
value.
one of the factors. And so what I was trying to do here is I've kind of taken each of the pieces of the funding formula, and I kind of grouped it together, because in some ways what I was curious to see is whether overall, if like, for example, in the special ed, if the overall number didn't change as much as it was how the students who were categorized were, like if a student went from a C level to a D level, or, you know, the shifts within it, so I could kind of capture, that's what the peach highlighted areas kind of is attempting to do, at least, is saying, okay, these are all similar categories. What happened to the overall group? And on the other one, I put all the special ed ones together, since that was one of the ones that went up, and you kind of see where there's all sorts of, there's AB, gifted, twice exceptional, and so forth, and then
And on the other one, is that pre-K, the EC program?
yes, yeah.
So we,
And that one, I think it went up by even, and I don't know if you're reading too much into this, but when I see that the overall basic program went down by 4.6, but the ones that are going to be funding our programs for the next 11, 12 years, the kindergarten ones went down 11%. So that kind of tells you what future numbers are I mean, I might be
It's
reading
an
too much into
indicator.
it. Yeah.
An early
yeah,
indicator, yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Whew, okay. Other questions? So I'd really love to know, maybe even starting with, when do we need to be done with this by? I'm not holding the actual schedule in my head of
Yeah. Yeah, so it's due to PD on June 1st, so the board meeting in May, now that there's the one, we will be presenting that for approval. In the next week or so, we're going to do some of that consolidation so we get a handle on, okay, we have 150 million, this much is salaries, benefits, get it down to where we could start making those decisions on some of that wish list items and get it finalized, get it wrapped up, and then we'll then present it, and the 910B5, the official one, should be coming any day now, and I'd be curious to see if there is any difference from what we've calculated to that. I don't anticipate there being much, but and then a big component of that, of course, is also the cash balance, and of course you have to be careful what you can use it for, but
yeah. And if we're, I think I heard you right, and I know I asked this question in audit committee as well, but, so right now we're at like 12%.
that's what I forecasted to end with, yeah.
End FY '26 with. And our policy is to have a cash balance of between 5 and 7?
7.5.
7.5%. So our cash balance is a little high right now, and that's something we need to look at and understand, and it may help us bridge some of these
Yeah, exactly.
these tough places, but we will want to be careful, because that's kind of one-time money, our cash.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, just so we're all aware, at this stage, we've got a meeting next week, and I would think we need, I don't remember if we had something on the agenda, but that we might need a budget update for FY '27, because I'm a little uncomfortable with where we are now, in that we have 2 more meetings before we're supposed to adopt the budget, and one of them's next week. And then on May 14th, I mean, I think we need to schedule a special meeting if there's any reason we can't adopt the full budget on May 14th, because going all the way to May 28th, that's probably not enough time for you to get it in the system by June 1.
Yeah.
So we'd need to do something in the interim week if there's anything there. And right now, we don't have a lot of information about our FY '27 budget and what's going on. And just to say, we went through in the last budget presentation conceptually all the categories that we have. The special revenue, which we always basically adopt way lower than we think it's going to be, because we don't have the notice of the grants that we're gonna get, and we can only budget the money we know about. So then special revenue, we do a lot of budget adjustments throughout the year. But ultimately, maybe, I don't know if anybody remembers where we were on a discussion of board budget priorities. I do think maybe that's what we need to do at our meeting next week in a robust way, because we haven't really wrestled with that.
Board budget priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe the option, the item could be, and we could have it, be FY '27 budget with either 2 things, or it could be, update on FY '27 budget and board budget priorities. Does anybody remember where we left the board budget priorities conversation? Okay, we'll need to.
Was that February last year?
Right. That's where, see, now you're getting where I am. I'm like, I don't know, it all runs together. Okay, So we'll, if we could all look at that and see, and ideally, we can figure out where we left off, and even, Superintendent, if it's all right to ask for an update from you on where we were on board budget priorities and then as much as possible, I mean, I think it's in here, that we've hit upon. Just gonna look at it a second, but I think it probably is in the sort of what happens next. So, yeah, on slide 9, staffing needs based on projected student counts. I mean, I guess these were in the meetings, but that's a big consideration that, I think we need to think about. Because ultimately, again, just as a reminder to the board, it's the operational budget, which, as Mr. Helford said at the beginning, all but $20 million, más o menos, is funded through the SEG. And that's where we have any and all discretion. Staffing requirements, and then all of the increases, which end up often being more than our SEG increase, in part, I don't know, I mean, Dr. Garcia went through this ad nauseum one time. I remember Senator Worth being here and some others, and it's like the units never shake out the same way the SEG increase does. It just never does. And then maybe it's partly because of the second bullet, I'm on page 13, salary increases from additional licensure, years of experience. We tend to have a more experienced workforce, and higher levels of licensure. And compression is always an issue, compaction in the salary tables.
And the minimum wage is going up quite a bit next year, 17 and a half.
Yeah, and so that's a big one. And we did the new union contract, so we've got that piece in place, I think. That was our last meeting, if I remember correctly, right? With NEA, we completed and did we ratify the new union contract? No, not this year. Okay,
That was last year. Can I jump in real quick? Because you were talking about salary and compaction and whatnot, and you mentioned 10% increase in health insurance premiums. We know we have 80/20 coming on board, but our staff is also only mandated a 1% raise. And so we have done this exercise the last few years, which feels very helpful and important to kind of break down scenarios for certain levels of teachers for what their health insurance premiums are, and it won't be tiered this year. So again, that should be a little more straightforward, but wanting to make sure that no one is taking home less money because of those increased costs, especially in a year when we have such a low increase in salaries. So that's definitely information that would be really helpful for me to have, so that we can have an understanding of what that impact's going to be on take-home pay, because those are those numbers in practice for our staff.
those were good tables we had. And it's always, there's this, in the end, board budget priorities could look like making sure we get bus drivers, cafeteria workers, many of the lowest paid positions, EBAs, secretaries up. That's always felt important to me, and we do then create compaction issues, but, of course, we have to compete with other public entities, all of these things, and we need to have people work here.
Yeah, I loved it the year that we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, even though it wasn't mandated then. Like, we knew that it was the right thing to do, and with costs being what they are right now, I mean,
Yeah.
my 16-year-old washes dishes for $20 an hour. I can't quite fathom someone working in a classroom with special needs kids for less than that. So having an understanding of what those pay grades are for different workers, I think is also helpful, because ultimately that's my number one priority, is just making sure that people can live on the wages that we're paying them.
Well, and so maybe that's a thing. I mean, truly, I would love us to get to, nobody makes less than $20 an hour in the Santa Fe Public Schools. I think it is the prevailing wage. And I don't know what that would look like and what that would do to our budget, but I think that that might be something we could think about. And, you know, it looks like if the board's willing, we could ask for some math around that. Oh, boy, okay. We've got a bunch to do on the budget, and whatever we can do next week. Why do we only have one in May?
The last one's in the last week of May if we choose
Yeah,
that. but
okay,
would-
so it's the 14th and 28th, so that it just runs up against the deadline that the schedule is.
And then we have graduations the following week.
Right, well, the week in between,
Yes.
which would be tiring, but we could do it, or we could do it on Tuesday or something.
We also don't need to wait until the 28th, we could do it on the 26th.
Right, correct,
Richard,
which,
do you need 2 weeks prior?
No, I think I could work with that if it does require that one on the 26th, by then it's 90% or so, you know. No, I don't. Now it's
well,
okay.
and another thing to think about, I mean, we've sort of veered into advanced planning, but if it made more sense to do meaty budget work the first week in May, we could schedule a meeting for May 7th or something like that. I'm a little concerned that the clock is running out, and right now, we don't have a lot of information. And we certainly, you know, I'm not comfortable with looking at our FY27 budget in a substantial way, just once. We've often needed more than that. Okay, any other general thoughts on the school budget? And again, this consolidating all non-salary needs of schools and departments, that's a real big step. I mean, I think a lot of it's here and outlined, and we do need to, utility costs, other revenue forecasts, which ends up being a bunch of blanks every year. Oh, boy, okay. All right. Richard, Superintendent, other final thoughts? Then we will go ahead and move on.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
did.
Yep.
Thank you, President Noble. I just thought before we moved on, because we talked about bringing, you know, having priorities sort of prepared for next week, I wondered if you wanted to frame any of that for our new board member, since he maybe hasn't done that exercise, unless we did it in February. I can't remember, or, you know, as far as how specific, you know, I don't want him to think about things that aren't realistic, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Why don't you go ahead? I think you've got, do you want to frame it? I'm coming up short with.
I mean, I appreciate it, but I don't really, I'll just kind of go with what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Just because,
Okay.
you know, I am new and.
I think you've probably sort of grasped that there's not a whole lot of
Right,
flexibility,
wiggle
right?
room, yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of ideas
Yeah.
and, you know,
Yeah, no, I'll just.
Broad
Kind of go
priorities.
with what we need to
Yeah.
do, really.
okay.
And I think one of the exercises that used to occur is to try to tie it to a board priority of some sort. We feel this will help move the needle on board priority number, 2 or whatever. That was one of the methodologies that used to use to try to, instead of rewriting a board goal or policy every, kind of already tie it to one that's already in existence.
And in the past, we've gone wildly. I mean, one year there was literally, I think it was budgeting money from the Alvord sale, and there was a menu of things that included a reading by first grade, the end of first, um, um, initiative, and that was funded for a little while. One year there were social media stipends for engagement at various different schools and PTAs. So we have gotten to wildly specific things. You know, I mean, just to say, and I think loosely I've stated, and then there's been nodding and maybe validation, or Vice President Bozé stated this, you know, how do we get the lowest wages up? And to me, that would be the number one priority for us to consider this year is paying people, but also paying the lowest earners more, and making sure that we can be competitive in some of these areas. Oh, that was my other question. So how does this dovetail with NEA negotiations, contract negotiations?
So at this point, we would look at these options and priorities, and then you guys make the decision, right? Based at another, hopefully next week, you decide, yes, these are the priorities we want to work with. Then I would sit down with the union in negotiations, and we'd go over pay tables and sign off on them with the increases. And then hopefully the meeting in June, we'd be able to ratify everything in negotiations.
Okay, and this is not a big negotiation year. This is a limited opening.
No, it's a big one.
It's a big one?
Everything is open on the table, but we started very early. We started at the end of February, and so we've been hitting items that are not tied to money. But now's the time, like, we need to start sitting with them and talking about, like, the pay raises and the increases and looking at pay tables. And so I think, like, next week, if you guys do decide, like, this is a priority, like student nutrition, bus drivers, EBA secretaries, and we provide those scenarios, then I think the following week I can just sit with the union and start looking at those pay tables with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and are bus drivers in NEA?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and it's custodians and?
Custodians are,
SFPS.
Yeah, and who else other than custodians are in the other union, that one?
Facilities, so when we think about our building engineers, maintenance staff, trades people,
Okay. And those negotiations are happening as well?
yes.
Usually.
And we're at the pay table area as well.
Okay.
So no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Not a lot to do in the next month. Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Moving on to our continuing bilingual multicultural education programs. This is an application submitted to the New Mexico Public Education Department's Language and Culture Division every spring to indicate which bilingual multicultural education programs will be continuing. We'll have 6 dual language programs at El Camino Real, Salazar, Sweeney, Cesar Chavez, which is called White Tiger Elementary, Ramirez Thomas, and Ortiz. We will continue to have 3 heritage model programs at Santa Fe High, Capitol High, and Milagro. Anything to add here, Superintendent?
No, President, thank you.
2,000 students roughly will be participating in bilingual programs for the 26-27 school year. Okay. Any questions from the board?
President Noble, I move that we pass the continuing bilingual multicultural education programs application.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Thank you very much. Moving on to our consent agenda, we have 1 contract on our contracts over $60,000. And we have the minutes from the March 26th regular meeting and April 26th special meeting for executive session. They're not in our packets, just to say it's a $558,000 contract for GM Emulsion LLC to repave the west parking lot and main road entrance at Eco. And Jamie Holiday is listed, so might be able to give us extra details if anybody wants them. But I think we need some paving.
At Eco.
And it's the area by the shops, and then also where our buses go to get into Santa Fe High, they go through Eco and then through the loop. Some of you are very familiar. yeah.
Thank you for framing that. I have been on both of those roads recently and would concur.
And they're funded by the GeoBond/mill levy. Any questions, or is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay. Moving on to board discussion and possible action. We start with item A, 2025-2026, community committee appointments to CRC and audit. Are there any appointments? I'm going to take this off if you don't mind. Okay.
Well, somebody else has a seat that's vacant. It's not just.
I have a seat and I've been having trouble finding a replacement. So if anybody knows of someone that might be interested in the audit committee from my district, I'd be happy to.
And I'm looking for
Consider
someone
that.
in my district for CRC. I've asked around a lot.
Okay. And then item B, superintendent's contract. Dr. Gonzalez.
Okay.
You have to check your mic.
Oh, yes, thank you. I move to offer the superintendent a new contract with the following key terms. A, duration of 2 years beginning July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2028. B, an annual salary of $208,000, inclusive of the legislative mandated 1% raise. C, professional dues fees clause that includes registration and travel for American Association of School Superintendents and at least one other conference. And D, a supplemental retirement plan of $10,000 per contract year that complies with IRS standards. Reading the hem's a little difficult.
I will second.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Do you want to go through the two? Didn't she say go through two of them and then vote at the end?
I thought she said.
It's two motions.
Two motions, so
Okay.
we're on the first one. All right. Any further discussion on motion number 1 with 4 key provisions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, motion carries. Congratulations, Superintendent.
Thank you.
And keep going?
Okay. 2, I move to authorize legal counsel to prepare and the board president to sign a new contract that includes the above new terms with all other terms remaining the same.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay. We will move ahead and get that done. Moving on to advanced planning.
President Noble, if I can, just real quick, I wanted to update the board on the renaming White Tiger Elementary.
yes, please. Sorry.
We've, Board Member Blay and I have attended our first meeting with the staff. We have a real aggressive plan because we would like to have a name brought to the board before the kids start school in August. And so we're really going to focus between now and the end of the school year on student engagement and parent engagement from within the community. And then we'll, of course, that'll branch out to the other groups and people interested in participating. But we really feel strongly that the name, or at least a strong recommendation, should come from the school itself and the students and families and staff that work there and have worked there. So that's going to be our area of focus over the next few weeks. And then again, hopefully we can bring forward a name for the board sometime in the summer and have a new name in place by next school year. So we'll keep you updated on the progress we make.
And if I could, just to piggyback, I really want to commend staff because they really were organized. They had a really good game plan together. Ruth has already gotten everything kind of organized and set out and set up. So it's been really impressive how quickly the troops rallied and came up with exactly to follow Member Beta's, what he just said about the school. So it was a very, very well-done meeting, well-done process as well.
Wonderful. Thanks for the update. Anything else on board discussion and possible action? Okay, now moving on to advanced planning. Anything to note or any changes? Go ahead.
4:25, it's not 9, it's 10.
Thank you. 4:25. We did move to 10 a.m. Anything else?
CRC won't be meeting on 4/29.
CRC will not be meeting on 4/29. That tentative meeting can be removed. I think we got a notice today about a suggested date for July on the 23rd of July. I don't know if anybody, what?
For what?
For the school
your
board?
meeting.
We are actually statutorily required to meet once a month. So, turns out the practice of not meeting in July is not something we should do. So, I wasn't going to say those words. I don't know if everybody's got their summer plans, but, you know, that is the, yes, it's even on my calendar, only meeting in July, tentative executive session, board and regular meeting on the 23rd. So we'll add that to advanced planning, and that is.
And the 25th, we're not meeting as well, of June.
We will not be meeting the 25th of June.
Correct.
Okay.
It's semi-related to advanced planning because I see the 5/12 Partners in Education meeting on here. And I think I saw a
Yes.
flyer for a dinner that evening. But I also think our housing task force is scheduled that night.
That is correct.
So we should work with the chair to rearrange that.
Correct.
Okay. A few adjustments there. Anything else on advanced planning? Then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.